John Paul MacDuffie from the Management Department at the Wharton School. I'm here with J.D. Power III, or J. David Power, also known to his friends and everyone else as Dave Power. He has been our special guest at a conference of the Mac Institute for Management Innovation on the theme of disruptive technologies, what happens when they meet tightly integrated systems. Dave brought his own disruptive impact to the auto industry through the company he ran that bears his name, which delivered to the public reports on the quality of automobiles publicly and with the best and the worst identified. So I'm here to talk to Dave about his career based on a new book that has been published about him. So Dave, welcome to Wharton.
Thank you, John Paul.
So the career that you've had started with a number of experiences after you graduated from Wharton. I forgot to mention you're a Wharton grad.
Yes.
And then you started your own firm. So it's almost a modern career path when I think about what my students say. They say, I want to work for a while and then I want to start my own business. So tell us some of the things that really brought you to that decision. You graduated from Wharton and you decided to go to the auto industry. Why was that?
Because 14% of all jobs in the United States in the 50s were due to the automobile industry, and I thought that gave me plenty of chance to make a name for myself in that industry.
Now, you went to Ford, but they didn't put you in the automotive division right off. Tell us about that.
And I was a marketing major, and they put me into finance, so-called training program, which was on-the-job training.
Uh-huh.
And I learned a hell of a lot. It was just an industry, the tractor industry, was starting to go downhill fast because of the mechanization of the farms with bigger equipment.
Yeah.
The little tractors no longer had a place.
And you were doing auditing, so you got to look at how the dealership system worked, which, again, wasn't what you expected, but probably had an impact because you ended up studying dealers the rest of your career.
Yes. I audited the dealers after a sales contest. I arrived just after the contest was over, and they suspected that they were getting credit for vehicles that tractors or implements that they hadn't sold yet.
Ah.
And we had to go around and cross-check them.
Yeah.
That was an experience that gave me really hands-on reactions of people when they get caught.
Sure. The next step for you was out of Ford and into the market research business for a while. So tell us about what you learned from that experience.
Well, I wanted to get out of finance, and Ford wouldn't transfer me, so I ended up with Marplan, the market research arm of McCann Erickson, and they had just won the Buick and GMC account.
Okay.
And so we started doing a lot of research for them, market research.
And you learned a few things about how market research was done that you didn't necessarily like, right?
Right. I had a situation where I was representing Buick division in this meeting. They had a big project, $1.5 million at that time was huge.
Yeah.
And we were told to measure the effectiveness of the advertising of all of the General Motors divisions. So we had to create a questionnaire to do it. And the first day, we got to question 1A through 1B at lunch, and then came back, and we didn't even reach question 2.
Wow.
We had about 40 people in the room trying to agree on the way the question should be.
Wow. So the customer
conducted.
really controlled very tightly what data could even be collected.
Yes.
And that data came back just to that customer.
Yes. Yes, it was if you did work for one car company, you had to remain captive to that. You couldn't work with any other car company.
Yeah. The same way it was with the advertising companies. Right?
Advertising.
Yeah. So I know that became an important principle for your business, that you would
Yes.
you would be independent and not be captive in that way. You worked for McCullough, a company that made chainsaws. That is a very interesting
Yes.
part of that experience,
Yes.
which I guess taught you about listening to the customer.
Yes, when I was in Marplan in Los Angeles, we conducted a study for their client, which was McCulloch, and it was interesting because what I found is that they were still doing their forecasting based on the number of trees that were going to be cut down in the Pacific Northwest, and the trees in the southeast, the pine trees that were made pulp.
Yeah.
And they forgot about the casual user that was just the family chainsaw. And
trees don't buy the home version of the chainsaw, right?
And we opened up a whole new view of what they had to do. And they after I finished the study, they asked the officials at McCann Erickson if they could offer me a job as director of corporate planning. And since they were the client, they said okay.
Okay.
And that's how I got to be an employee of
McCulloch.
McCulloch.
And I remember from the book that another thing you learned is that they basically were applying the same standards they applied to their professional chainsaws to the home equipment. So it was built to operate 200 hours a year, and these folks were probably only using it 5 or 6 hours.
Yes.
Completely over-engineered. You might have seen that a few times in the auto industry too.
Yes.
So sometime around there, some friends came to visit, and you decided to start your own firm. So tell us about that.
Yes, my classmate at Wharton came into town from Rochester, New York, with 2 other young fellows. All 3 of them had their MBAs and were going out to start a new company. This is in 1968, very early 68. And they said that they had quit their jobs, and they all had good jobs. General Electric,
Kodak and Xerox, probably,
and Xerox.
Yeah.
And I said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "We're going to measure the meters at homes via satellite." And this is back in '68. We only had 1 or 2 satellites up there then. And I said, "That's crazy." And they said, "Well, if we don't make it, we'll get another job." And I thought about it, and I went home and talked to my wife about it, and she said, "You should start your own company." So
Great.
that's how we did it.
Yeah.
And
And your wife was an important partner in the business from the start.
Right, and we had child labor rates. They'll never let me down now.
That's right. It's a wonderful image from the book of, as the surveys are being sent out to the consumers, your 4 kids are carefully taping the shiny quarter on each one to make it's that extra bit of
Face
incentive
up.
to get the response. Face up, right?
Yes.
The head had to be square, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we got perhaps the first double-sided Scotch tape, which was important too.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Speeded up the process.
It did.
Yeah. So you, of course, started with direct mail surveys. You have, with the auto industry, this resource which not every country has, which is this third-party RLPOC, which registers every new vehicle. And I heard you say something about the response rate you got. Something that would amaze most market researchers these days.
First few surveys that we did, we got close to 50% response rate.
Wow.
And it ran 30 to 50% consistently because people wanted to talk about their cars.
Yeah. Some of them sent back handwritten notes and copies of invoices and with circles on them, and they were so revved up about it.
We collected those. About 10% of them included something like that, even photographs of the paint fading or the trunk lid leaking. And so we would send them on to the manufacturer, as we told them in our cover letter that we would do that. And we lost sight of what the manufacturers did with them. Some of them got more than others.
Mm-hmm. Had you already resolved to publicly disclose the data on all the manufacturers with the surveys?
Not at that
yet.
time, and it was supposed to be confidential.
Okay.
But when we did the Mazda rotary engine survey, we found a problem with it. The first 2,000 buyers, and the O-ring was failing at once it hit 30,000 miles, and the O-ring kept the cooling system from leaking out or leaking into the engine, and it just started failing, and they'd have to take the whole engine out of the car to replace it.
Wow. So, yeah, this was the Wankel engine, which was greeted as quite an innovation, and it was also improved gas mileage.
And one of the car companies that subscribed to it, the survey results, released it to the Wall Street Journal.
Not you.
No.
But a competitor, basically.
And we had to, they called me first, and we said, "How did you get a hold of it?" And the editor said, "We have our sources." And it was from Detroit, so I knew it was one of the big three. They really said they were going to do an article, and I said, "Well, I'd like you to have the benefit of my balanced press release on this." And he said, "Okay, get it to us right away."
At the moment, there was no such press release, right? But you set out to write it immediately.
I sat down and immediately wrote it on a pad. And we had to find a way of getting it right to Detroit. And we ended up finding somebody with a telex machine, and the gal sent it. And we were on the front page the following day. And
that's when you learned the power of the press, essentially, to sort of amplify your data and get the message across.
It went viral. We were in just about every newspaper, radio, and TV station for a week.
So, looking at the present day and at the future a bit, let me ask you two questions. One is about new technologies. So often executives and engineers in the auto companies say, if we're slow with new technologies, the customers complain because they want the new functionality. But if we put it in and it doesn't work perfectly the first time, or doesn't work perfectly every time, or we have trouble learning it, then they're really grumpy about it. And Ford is in the news these days for quality complaints about sync and My Ford Touch. Mercedes had the issue with the S-Class. It's a repeated story, and it would show up in your surveys, of course. So what are your thoughts on the challenges from both the automaker and the consumer side of bringing this new technology in?
I think there's about 5 or 10% buyers want that advanced information.
Okay.
The 90% that don't are the ones who complain.
So do you think the automakers are too responsive to those lead users?
Yes.
So, okay, so they get out ahead of themselves. I guess another issue is that each company really does their own thing, right? So there's virtually no standards for these
Right.
things as we see in computers or...
And multiple car households
Right.
now, very common.
Yep.
They have different brands, and they have to adapt to
Yep.
the electronics in the particular car they're
Yeah.
driving.
And who wants
When
to
they
learn?
shift.
Who wants to learn 3 different systems?
Yes.
Yeah. No, it's an industry that's always been resistant to standardizing at the industry level. They want
And now
to
the
control it.
handheld that they use all the time when they get in the car, that's better than
Sure.
using what, at least now,
Yeah.
than what is in the car.
Yeah. I know people say sometimes that the auto companies missed a chance to get people using car phones
Yes.
because they were slow to install them. But if you imagine, once you got a physically installed car phone and how fast the technology moved and how infrequently you replace your car, you can imagine how quickly that car phone would have seemed very, very clunky.
Yes.
Let me ask you about the future of dealers, again, remembering that dealers have been an important part of your business right along. You stirred some controversy in the early 2000s with a prediction that the traditional dealership its days might be numbered. There was a threat from more of a big box model or a large mega dealer model. There might be threats from other kinds of things like direct sales through the internet. Tell us a little bit about
Well, it caused
the controversy and what you think now, about a decade later.
Caused quite a bit of controversy.
Yeah.
And I think it was the idea that, I know it was because they cut out my introduction part explaining why I was saying what
that's
was
right.
going on.
Yeah.
And it
They didn't publish
sounded
your
like
full
I
editorial.
was going, at the end I said if they didn't like what I was saying, they should talk to Walmart. And that set a button off, and the dealers were all upset.
Yeah. As you look at what's changed in the last 10 years, do you still predict a threatened future for the traditional auto dealer, or have they
Absolutely.
adapted in good ways?
Well, they're adapting in one way that is good, I guess, for the dealers, is they're consolidating. There were 50,000 dealers in 1950.
Okay. Wow.
Franchised new car dealers. Today there's 17,000.
Wow.
And
So about a third, and obviously much higher
Yes.
sales.
And AutoNation and Group One and other consolidators are taking up several thousand dealers
Yeah.
into their fold, and they aren't truly dealers any longer when they
Sure.
do that.
Sure. What
So
about
it's-
the whole issue of direct sales from the manufacturer to the customer through the internet? There are these state laws that mostly prohibit that
Yes.
now. Do you see
Yes.
those going away, or is the
They
dealer
were
lobby too
there
strong?
I think the lobbying is very difficult for dealers today. What has happened is the consumer has more information than the dealer,
Yep. Yeah.
and they control the market.
Yeah.
And it's going to be determined by them, and it's going to be determined what the manufacturers have to build to remain competitive. It's the dealer in charge.
Yeah.
This change has happened over the last 10 years,
Yeah.
and it's only going to get more. And they get instant information. It's amazing, the customer.
Yeah.
And they don't want to sit down and haggle a price or what have you. They want it done. So they're going to demand change.
Do you support the efforts of Tesla's CEO Elon Musk to break those laws and get the possibility of direct sales? I know he's challenged the law in Texas and
Yes.
in New York State.
I believe that the laws are not reasonable, and they were developed in the 1950s when there were a lot of dealers, and it was to give the dealers some say with the manufacturers who were dictating everything. And so they got that covered, and now their value to the whole operation of selling the vehicles is diminished.
Yeah.
And now they're saying they
So-
should still be in force.
Yeah.
And I don't think they're going to be able to hold up on it.
Yeah.
And so we see more changes coming down the route.
Okay, my last question then, another look into the crystal ball. At the conference today, we were hearing about autonomous vehicles and the self-driving car. Is this a trend that you think consumers will want? It's like you say, maybe consumers don't always want this latest functionality, but there's a lot of claims about better safety, of course, as well as some of the convenience of not having to give as much attention to driving.
Yeah, well, I think that maybe for the average driver, they'll accept it. But it takes the fun out of driving.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a different story for the automotive enthusiast.
Yes.
But I think it's going to be in our future.
Yeah.
And you'll still perhaps be able to override the
Yes, I'm sure that's right. You'll be able to
speed
override it.
limit and
Yeah.
so forth.
One of our speakers got a laugh when he said, most male drivers say that they would like a system like that for their wife and their kids, but not for them.
No.
So, well, thank you very much, Dave. It's a great pleasure to have
Well,
you here,
thank
to
you,
have a
John
chance to talk
Paul.
to you. And again, your book was a marvelous read about a fascinating career.
Thank you.